The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Here's what's cooking on today's Sports Stove podcast. We're talking lots of football, NFL picks, Josh Dobbs' Hall of Fame career, and so much more. That's what's cooking on today's Sports Stove podcast.
From Belly Up Sports and the Belly Up Podcast Network, you're listening to the Sports Stove podcast with your host, Vince Stover.
Hey, good looking, what you got cooking? How's about cooking something up for me?
Welcome in to an all-new edition of the Sports Stove podcast presented by Righteous Felon Jerky, your one-stop shop for the greatest jerky in the world. Find your next favorite flavor at righteousfelon.com. Use the promo code STOVE15 to get 15% off your purchase. I'm your host, Vince Stover, joined as I am every Wednesday by my dad, Dale Stover. Dad, how you doing?
Doing good. We've had great fall weather here this week, so doing good up here.
Yeah, now I think what they say, I think they call that football weather.
Yep.
Up in your neck of the woods. We'll talk a little bit about the ongoings of Michigan and Ohio State a little bit later on in the program. I'm sure that'll be a fun conversation anyways. But we're going to start the night off with the NFL topics and things going on in the NFL world right now. Deshaun Watson goes for season-ending surgery after actually playing a really decent game last week. And now he's done for the year with the Browns at 6-3, right there at the top of the division, tied with the Steelers, above the Bengals, right behind the Ravens. And it just kind of seems like, well, any hope the Browns had for Super Bowl is probably out the window. They could still have a okay year, maybe even make the playoffs, but it seems like without Watson, their hopes are kind of done. Would you say that's the case, or do you still believe in Cleveland?
Well, it's definitely hurt their chances with Watson being out. In all honesty, the strength of Cleveland has been their defense, and they're still going to be there. So it just depends, if their offense can score enough. With their defense, they should be able to stay in games. But, yeah, without Deshaun Watson, and, of course, they've been without Nick Chubb all year. So they're really down a couple stars there, no doubt about it.
Yeah, good old Pat Summitt said offense sells tickets, but defense wins championships. Well, I mean, you can't argue with her too often, but I don't think it matters how good the Cleveland defense is. I don't think that their offense is going to be good enough for them to propel to a Super Bowl this year. And honestly, I think they're probably going to take a quick fall out of grace here in the weeks ahead. We already started seeing some firings happen, but the Bills fired their offensive coordinator. Josh Allen takes some of the blame for that. But, I mean, obviously the Bills have been this underachieving team this year. You never know what you're going to get out of them. And they lose again this past week. I mean, what can you say about Buffalo? At this point, I don't have them as a Super Bowl contender even. I mean, they have the talent and they could turn things around. But if I had to pick teams today, Buffalo would not be a favorite that I would pick at this point. Will the firing of the offense coordinator do the job in Buffalo, or are they just going to kind of have a waste of a season?
Well, I think it's going to be a tough season. I don't think just firing the offensive coordinator, will change things around. That probably may not even inspire the players a whole lot from there. We had talked before the year started. It was an important year, I think, for McDermott and for Buffalo because they've really had, in the NFL, you have to have a defense, you have to have a quarterback, and they've got both of those. So what is the problem? And they're kind of getting past their window of opportunity here in a lot of ways. So I think it's going to be now. Buffalo fans again are loyal, and they've been there through a lot of hard times. But I think they really thought they were in Super Bowl contention here for several years, and I don't know what I don't know what the problem is. I don't know if it's a motivation problem, preparation problem. I think it does have to fall back to coaching somewhat, because when you look at the talent, I mean, the talent is there, and they've played well in the past. So, what is the problem this year? The AFC is strong, but I don't think that's been the problem necessarily either. So I think Buffalo, the things could definitely, they have unraveled somewhat, and I think they could continue to unravel here.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, they've been bad on the road. They're 1-3 on the road. They're 2-5 in the AFC this year. You talked about the AFC being tough. They are 2-5 in the AFC, but the reality is the teams that they've lost to, they shouldn't have lost to. I mean, they shouldn't have lost to the Broncos, and they almost had that one won on Monday, but they still lose that game. They lose to the Bengals. You can live with that. They beat the Buccaneers. They lost to the Patriots. Should have never happened. They lost to the Jaguars in London. You can live with that. And they lost to the Jets to start the year. That was a tough one. So, I mean, at the end of the day, Buffalo, like you said, they can still turn it around. They can still make the playoffs. They can still be a threat once they get there. But at this point, I got Miami, of course, Kansas City, Jacksonville, Baltimore. I'd put Cincinnati over Buffalo right now. I just don't think Buffalo is a team that's pulling in a whole lot of positive vibes. That being said, they do have the Jets and the Patriots in the division. They can get some wins there. They can catch the Dolphins. I mean, at the end of the day, we could look back at it in a couple weeks and be like, why were we ever worried about the Bills? But at this point, we are worried about the Bills because, well, let's face it, they haven't looked great to this point. So plenty of things to work on there. The New York Jets dad had a player-only meeting that supposedly went well, and then hours later, the Jets cut running back Michael Carter to the surprise of many of the players, it sounds. He was picked up on waivers by Arizona. I was really hoping maybe Green Bay would go get him because I'm a big Michael Carter fan. That being said, he goes to Arizona. An interesting pickup for them to build as well. So I know you're not confident. You're more confident than I am on the Jets, but I don't think you're super confident on the Jets either. And it seems like maybe there's some internal struggle going on there in New York, which is interesting considering we all kind of threw their season away after the first, 4 minutes and Aaron Rodgers went down.
Yes, well, the Jets, I think the Jets have been in trouble. They banked everything on Aaron Rodgers, and part of it was his ability, part of it was his leadership, and, being able to, he brought players with him. And when that changed, they were in a tough spot. I don't think they've done the right thing with the quarterback, but not real sure what else they could have done. They're kind of in a tough spot there from that. But, I think the Jets are a little bit of a mess. I mean, I like the coach there, but I think he's in a tough spot also. And they've won a couple games that they easily could have lost. I think that's why they're still, it's easy for people who want the Jets to succeed to say, well, a couple wins and they're still in it. But I don't think they've played to that ability. And we will see, Buffalo plays them this week and a couple more losses, and Aaron Rodgers keeps talking and wants to come back, but he's been very clear. He'll come back if he can get medically cleared, and I don't know that can happen. And two, they have to be in the mix. And a couple more losses, and they're not in the mix, especially with the North Division being as strong as it is. So we will see, and teams like Houston and teams like that are going to have the advantage on them also. So, again, I've not been big on the Jets at all. And, we'll see where it goes. But they've kind of put all their eggs in one basket. And when that basket fell through, that makes it tough. But they don't have the quarterback right now to compete. And you have to have that.
let's talk about some quarterbacks that had positive weeks last week. CJ Stroud leads the Texans over the Bengals 30-27 last week, throwing for almost 356 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. And Devin Singletary had a huge running game. Houston's been missing that all year, 150 yards on the ground. CJ Stroud, though, is doing what he's doing, first of all, as a rookie, and second of all, with receivers that most people didn't know about heading into the year as well. Noah Brown had 172 yards on 7 catches last week against the Bengals. Dalton Schultz, who we do know, 4 catches, 71 yards. Tank Dell, 6 catches. They were down Nico as well. So they get a big win over a Bengals team that's looked pretty solid as of late. The Bengals actually, they almost won the game as well. Joe Burrow, 347 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. But CJ Stroud is clearly, this year at least, the best rookie quarterback on the field, it seems like, and maybe the best situation the Texans kind of fell into, because our old friend McLean reported this week. He said, had the Texans had the number 1 overall pick, they would have taken Bryce Young, but they got CJ Stroud kind of as the second option, and it's turned out pretty good for Houston.
Yeah, CJ Stroud has been amazing, for a rookie. He's played well. It appears that he has leadership, as far as the team is concerned. Of course, I think the coach is the big thing there. I think he was able to turn the whole atmosphere around and get everybody positive to make a run from there, and that has helped. But Stroud, by far been the best rookie quarterback and one of the best young quarterbacks in the last couple of years. And of course, we talked about it, and several people felt like he was the best pro-ready of the ones coming out, and he definitely has showed that at this point. I mean, he does show that he's a rookie some. I mean, he just still makes some mistakes, but he obviously has been able to be the leader and to play very well. And we've talked about it. They may very well be in the hunt for their division title, definitely in the hunt for a playoff berth.
Agreed. How about Josh Dobbs? I mean, Hall of Fame quarterback, MVP, comeback player of the year, most improved player. You put any award you want on it. Josh Dobbs has been amazing. He comes into Minnesota, leads a comeback win last week, not even knowing the plays. Had to be shown where the locker room was when he showed up to the field on Sunday. And he goes for 268 yards and a touchdown, as well as 44 yards and a touchdown rushing, and gets the win over the Saints. I want to start with Josh Dobbs. We talked about him last week, so we don't need to spend much time on him. But it is so impressive what he's doing this year.
No, it really is. And we like Josh Dobbs being from Tennessee and everything there, but he is really, you talk about comeback player of the year or whatever. I mean, he has taken his opportunity, and obviously I think, he's rallied people around him. It's kind of a bittersweet thing because, we really like Josh Dobbs, but he's on the Vikings, and that makes it kind of tough. But he's going to get Jefferson back, and it'll be interesting to see if they make a run or, if they still struggle and it gets close. But the NFC is a place where they should be able to make the playoffs.
He found a new best friend in TJ Hawkinson. Found him 11 times, 134 yards in the touchdown on a Sunday. If they get Jefferson back, that's going to give them a nice other security blanket. Dad, they beat the Saints. Derek Carr goes down injured, and the one and only Jameis Winston comes in and goes for 122 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 picks. I still am intrigued by Jameis Winston. I like Derek Carr better, but I think Winston can play in this league. Is that going to give any kind of boost to the Saints, who are 5-5 this year and in desperate need of some wins because that division is no good? So is Jameis Winston going to be the savior for the Saints this year?
Well, the thing that's going to be the savior for the Saints, like you said, is their division. I mean, it's a poor division. Winston can play, no doubt about it. Is he a regular every week starting quarterback? I don't know. He hasn't really proved that yet in his career, but he can definitely throw the ball. He can play quarterback. And the Saints, again, with their division, they should be in good shape to win the division. Otherwise, nobody in that division is going to make the playoffs, I don't think, even though the NFC is struggling.
There is a chance, and a high chance, that either Jameis Winston or Baker Mayfield is going to win that division. And and if you started at the beginning of the season and said, you could, I would have said Baker going into the year, by the way. I was all on the Baker train. But most people would have been like, wait, you're telling me Baker Mayfield's going to win a division? Jameis Winston's going to win a division? It could be Desmond Ridder. We don't know. But to me, that's incredible when you look at those things. Real quick on a couple other games from last week, and then we'll get into this week. Some surprises. The Browns upset the Ravens, even with, like I said, Deshaun Watson played a really good game, played injured, and got the win, so good for them. San Francisco blew out the Jaguars. The defense is phenomenal. Adding Chase Young, that's crazy. So the 49ers defense is absolutely stout, and they took care of the Jaguars. And then the Broncos, that's what I want to talk about. The Broncos beat the Bills. All of a sudden, the Broncos look like they're a competent team. Russell Wilson throws 2 touchdowns, only 193 yards. They get a run game somewhat going with Javonte Williams. This is a team that had higher expectations than how they played this year. And all of a sudden, they're starting to look respectable at the same time. How dangerous, if at all, are the Broncos?
Well, I don't know that they're dangerous, but it makes sense that they've gotten things going because, again, with their coach, they've got a good coach there, and he's had time now to get his system in. And if players start believing, I don't know that they're a dangerous team as far as going into the playoffs. They may make the playoffs just because some other teams are struggling. But I don't know because, again, the North is going to have several teams in there, I believe, and that may knock a lot of other teams out. But Denver's a hard team to figure right now when you're looking at picks. Are they really turning things around, or have they, have they just won a couple? They beat the Packers, but, I don't know that that's a signature win at this point for them, and could have easily lost that. But I don't know that they've turned things around. We'll know that in a couple of weeks, and we'll see if they win this week.
I mean, they beat the Chiefs and the Bills. So, I mean, those are quality wins.
That's true.
Their schedule the rest of the way out, Dad. They got the Vikings, who have been playing well, but they're not full strength. Then they got the Browns, who just lost their quarterback. They got the Texans, who've been playing good, but they're young. They got the Chargers, who are the worst team in the league. I'm saying that somewhat facetiously. They have the Lions, who have been decent, but they're beatable. They got the Patriots, beatable. They got the Chargers again, beatable. They end with the Raiders. I mean, this is a team that might only lose 2 more games the rest of the way. And if you go with that logic, all of a sudden this is a dangerous team. Now, will they only lose 2 games? Who knows? But at the end of the day, this is a team that has potential to make quite the impressive run the rest of the way out. And we'll see if they do just that. Let's get into week number 11. I can't believe we're already at week number 11 and get our picks for this week. We picked the 3 primetime games, and then we picked 3 random games of our own choosing. And last week, Dad had a phenomenal week. Did you get all of them right or 5 of them right?
I got all of them right. I thought I just got 5, and I looked at it, and the Bears didn't cover the spread. So, I got all 6 of them right.
Yeah, so last week I looked at it early on Sunday, and Dad was rolling and knew he was going to have a good week. Let's see here. Yeah, you got the Broncos. You went Broncos. That was a bold move and successful move on that one.
Yep.
Yeah, the Raiders, who were underdog to the Jets, you got that one. I picked opposite of you in both of those and missed. And then you went on the Baker train, Cleveland, Indianapolis, and Carolina, who all covered as well. So Congratulations on a perfect week last week. Now let's see what you do this week. And we've got a thriller of a game on Thursday night. Cincinnati Bengals versus the Baltimore Ravens. Bengals are without T. Higgins again this week. They are 3.5-point underdogs to the division-leading Ravens in Baltimore for this game, Dad. This is an important game for the division. A lot on the line. Don't usually get this on a Thursday night game, but we got it this week. How did you go with this one? Baltimore 3.5-point favorites.
Well, I went with the Bengals on this one. One, I think to cover. This could easily be a 3-point game. The Bengals could win this. Again, Baltimore, of course, lost last week. Both teams really need this. This is a big, big game in the division, no doubt about it. The Bengals have not necessarily, rebounded, but a week ago it looked like, well, they were one of the top teams in the AFC. But I think when you look at 3.5, I think it could easily be a field goal game, and so I'll go with Cincinnati.
Yeah, I like underdogs in division games. I think Cincinnati wins this game, actually. I don't fully believe in Baltimore. I think they're a good team, don't get me wrong. I just don't think that they're the best team. And I think Cincinnati, even being a little banged up, I like Cincinnati. I think the desperation is there for Cincinnati this week, too. I agree it could come down to a field goal as well. So I pick Cincinnati in this game also. Sunday night football is the game we talked about just a moment ago, or at least the teams we talked about a moment ago. The Denver Broncos on a roll, 3 straight wins at home, 2.5-point favorites over Minnesota, the rolling Minnesota Vikings. Josh Dobbs, Ty Chandler coming into the running back slot as well, who we talked about at the very beginning of the season, as I mentioned, as a dark horse for a sleeper pick in fantasy football. Ty Chandler's getting some touches now, so you might want to add him to your roster. Anyways, Denver 2.5-point favorite. Which way did you go on this one?
I went with Minnesota. This was a real tough one to pick, but I think Minnesota's on a roll. Denver, has played well, but Minnesota seems a little stronger, and they seem to find a way to win. It is on the road at Denver, but it was a tough one to pick. But I'm going to go with Minnesota.
A bubble has to burst this week, Dad. I'm going to go ahead and go with Denver in this one. I was leaning towards Minnesota, but I just at home, you got the error and all that stuff. Minnesota, if Justin Jefferson comes back, I might flip over to Minnesota, and he may be back this week. But at this point, I just think if there's going to be a bubble that bursts, it's going to be Minnesota before Denver. And so I'm going to go Denver in this game. Monday night, another great game. The Battle of the Kelseys, Kansas City hosting Philadelphia. Should be a great game. Kansas City 2.5-point favorites at home against Philadelphia. Which way did you go in this one?
Again, it was a tough one. It's kind of a toss-up, but I'll kind of go with my heart on this one, and I'll go with Philadelphia. If they're going to show that they're really, one of the top teams around, then this is the way to do it, to win in Kansas City. Won't be a surprise if Kansas City wins. But I went ahead and, again, I had great luck last week with picking underdogs. So I thought, well, let's go that way again, and we'll go with Philadelphia.
Now, that makes me feel even worse about this pick. I picked Philadelphia also. I just think Philadelphia is the better overall team, and I think they can steal one in Kansas City. Playing in Kansas City's tough. It will not be easy. Should be a really good game. But when you run the ball the way Philadelphia runs the ball, I just have a little bit more confidence in that. So I went Philadelphia also. All right, so now we got 3 other games this week. Who was game number 4 for you?
Again, it was really hard for me to find games I felt real confident with, but I think they're on a roll. We've talked about them, so I'm going to go with Houston at home over Arizona. Arizona has a way to keep it close, but 4.5 points. Again, I think Houston's got a chance here to make noise in their division, so they'll need to do it, and they're at home. Surely there's a lot going on there in Houston, fan support, And so I'm going to take Houston 4.5 over Arizona.
Yeah, I wish you wouldn't have done that, Dad. I did Houston also. I love what CJ Stroud's doing. They're going to, I think, have Nico Collins back this week too. And I still go Arizona doesn't want to win. The players obviously do. I just feel like they won last week, so they got that feeling good, whatever. They don't have to win this week now. I just feel more comfortable with Houston. I love what the coaching staff's doing. I really like what's going on in Houston right now. So I picked Houston as well, favored by 4.5 points in at home against Arizona. All right, who's game number 5 for you?
All right, I'm going to go with another underdog, and I've stayed away from this team for a couple weeks, but I really think it's going to click to this week, and I'm going to go with Green Bay, 3.5-point dog to the Chargers. Like you said, don't ever pick the Chargers, and they're at home. I think Green Bay has been close in a lot of ways, and playing at home, and it'll be a little cool up there for the boys from Los Angeles. And I just feel like this week that things could click and things could all go the right way instead of all going the wrong way. And again, it's 3.5. I think Green Bay will win, but they could get within a field goal and still cover here. So I'll go with Green Bay.
Other than week 1, the Packers have never won when you and I have both picked them. Hopefully that ends this week. You're right. I don't ever pick the Chargers. And I like to pick against the Chargers. 3.5-point underdog. You give me that as well. I'll take it. Give me Green Bay, 3.5-point underdogs at home. Listen, me and you have had conversations about this. I like what Green Bay's doing. I don't care if they lose games this year. Not a big deal to me. It's fine as long as they're getting better. And I think they're getting better. I think Aaron Jones is getting healthier. I think that they're starting to build some trust with Jaden Reed, the rookie receiver. Romeo Dobbs, of course, as well. And the things with Christian Watson will come around eventually. I just think the Chargers need to fire their coach, and this might be the week they do it. I go Green Bay, 3.5-point underdogs at home. All right, Dad. So far, we've all picked the same games. So don't pick the Steelers. Who are you picking for your last game?
Oh, you're going to be okay then. So
Yeah.
I wanted to look at there were several teams, favored teams with big spreads that I think will cover. And again, I mean, this doesn't make any sense, but hey, I picked the Vikings. So let's pick the Cowboys by 10.5 over Carolina. I think that's a very safe pick. Carolina's not doing well, even though their draft pick is not going to help them necessarily in the first round. But Dallas, can get on a roll, and so we'll go with Dallas over Carolina, even by 10.5.
How about them Cowboys? I almost picked Carolina, Dad, just because the Cowboys, they're like the Bills. You never know what you're going to get from them. They might win, but they might be way too close of a game. I did not pick Carolina. I did pick Pittsburgh, 4.5-point underdogs to Cleveland with the rookie quarterback out of UCLA. I'm not sold on that. I think the defense is really good in Cleveland. I think Pittsburgh's starting to find their way as well. They're both 6-3, huge division game. I love division underdogs. I went with Cincinnati against Baltimore. I'm going to go Pittsburgh against Cleveland. And I think things are starting to click in Pittsburgh. So I'll go with that one and see how that game shakes out this week. All right, let's look at a few other games going on this week. Detroit hosting Chicago. Justin Fields, I think, is making his return this week. Detroit 7-2, leading the division. Massive underdogs this week, 10.5 points. I'd feel more comfortable picking Detroit than I would Dallas, Dad. But you went with Dallas. That's fine. How do you think Detroit-Chicago is going to go?
Detroit should win, no doubt about it. Whether they'll cover, again, it's a division game. So, I don't know that Justin Fields is going to make any difference. He may. For his sake, he probably better hope he does. But I didn't feel real comfortable with that one either way. The Bears might keep it a little closer, but Detroit should win that.
Miami's 11.5-point favorites over Vegas. I almost went Vegas in this one, Dad. This is one that I looked at. That's a big spread, but Miami's obviously the better team. But 11.5 is big. I think Miami wins this game. I think Vegas, the reason why I didn't pick Vegas in this game, Dad, is I think that their bubble's about to burst as well. Aiden O'Connell, interim coach, and Antonio Pierce. I don't feel good about it. So I got Miami in this one. How do you think that one goes?
Yeah, I don't think the game's in Miami, so that made me think Miami will be fine on this one. Vegas has rallied, but I think there's too much going against them on this one. So I think it'll be the Dolphins.
The Giants have all kinds of injury issues, and they go to Washington, D.C. as 9.5-point underdogs. Washington's only 4-6. They haven't been great. They even traded some guys out. I mean, I don't know. I lean towards the Giants actually at least covering in this game. Washington should win, but who knows? How do you think about that one?
Yeah, the Giants are kind of a mess, but like you said, can Washington beat anybody by that much? So, and it's a division game, so I definitely stayed away from that one, even though Washington, like you said, should win.
Jacksonville got embarrassed by San Fran this week, but they get the Titans this week. 6.5-point favorites at home, Jacksonville is. I think Jacksonville bounces back this week. How about you?
Yes, Jacksonville should. I'm not as convinced that they're as powerful as I thought they were, but anyhow, no, they should win.
San Francisco, the defense is incredible. They found their groove back with Chase Young. They're 11.5-point favorites. You know, I like to ride the Baker train, Dad. I think Tampa can cover this game. I almost picked Tampa here as well. I do think San Francisco wins, though. Any thoughts on the game in California?
Well, I think San Francisco will win. But again, it's easy after last week to say, wow, San Francisco's got it all going again. But what happened to those 4 games that they lost? I mean, they're not invincible. So, but they have a lot of talent. And like you said, picking up that defensive lineman surely didn't hurt them at all. So we'll see. Maybe they'll be back to being the dominant team by the end of the season.
Buffalo, all kinds of turmoil facing off against the Jets. Buffalo 6.5-point favorites. I think the firing, I don't know that it had to be done, but I think it does spark a fire under Josh Allen and maybe wakes them up a little bit. I think Buffalo handles business against the Jets this week.
They should, and they better. If they lose to the Jets this week, you're going to see a lot of ugliness up in Buffalo, no doubt about it. But they should beat the Jets, and again, they could rally and look great this week. They have the ability to do that.
Yeah, Sean McDermott is in the hot seat, no doubt about that. They lose this week to the Jets. I think it almost signs, seals, delivers Sean McDermott getting fired in Buffalo at some point. Seattle, last game that we haven't covered yet. Seattle on the road. Only a 0.5-point favorite over the Rams. Kind of surprised by this line. Even though on the road, 0.5 point's not very much. I would have had Seattle more in the 2.5 range. Winning this game, I think the Rams are just not very good. So I'd still take Seattle in this game.
Yeah, I'm a little intrigued by the line on that too. Maybe somebody knows something that we don't, because it looks like they would be favored by more than that, because I agree with you. I don't think the Rams are very good. There is a chance Stafford will be back this week. Is that right? I think I've heard that.
So yeah.
And that could make a difference. But Seattle, again, one of those teams, 1 week it looks like they're contending for the division, and then all of a sudden they're not. So that could be that game probably could go either way.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's some injury issues in Seattle, but still, I don't know. That one surprises me for sure. Sorry, had to sneeze. So it should be a fun week of NFL games continuing through week 11. It's hard to believe we're already there. So we'll see how it shakes down. You can find us on the Sports Stove on runyourownpool.com. It's the Sports Stove NFL Pick 6. You can join the group and pick 6 games as well if you would like to do so. All right, Dad, let's transition now to college football. The rankings are back out again. Ohio State, Michigan, and Florida State all still in the top 4, but Georgia moves up to the number 1 spot in the college football playoff rankings. Washington, who's an underdog this week, is sitting there at number 5. Oregon, Texas, and Bama, the one-loss teams at 6, 7, and 8. Mizzou jumps up to number 9 and Louisville to number 10. We'll talk about the games in a moment, but let's start with the rankings as a whole. No big surprise. We know the top 5 are going to stay the top 5 until one of them loses.
No, that's very true. And of course, somebody's going to lose here in a couple of weeks for sure, with Ohio State and Michigan. And again, it's important for the other teams to continue. Georgia probably won't have trouble with Tennessee. It's at Tennessee, so it could be an interesting game. But it looks like they've kind of they're kind of back to the old Georgia here, and they're pretty powerful. Is what it looks like there. Washington does have the game, probably the best game of ranked teams coming up this week there. Florida State does have the schedule, and of course they got North Alabama or whatever this week, so they should be in good shape. And I think Michigan, Ohio State both should be able to handle the games you would think this week also. So we'll see. The teams behind the one-loss teams obviously want to stay that way, and that's important. But they all probably will be favored. So.
Yeah, I've seen North Alabama play. Florida State will have no problems with them. That is for sure. Let's look at some of these games, Dad. Georgia is only a 10-point favorite this week against Tennessee. I'm actually surprised. I thought it would be a little higher than that. Georgia has started some games slow, but they've always ended so strong, and they always win with no doubt left when the clock finally ticks 0. As a Tennessee fan, I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully it's a fun game, a decent game, and a good game. Not a whole lot of challenging games for ranked opponents this week, though. Michigan has Maryland, 19-point favorites there. Louisville has Miami. Miami's actually a half a point favorite over Louisville. It is in Miami, which is intriguing to me. Let's see here. Looking real quick at Utah and Arizona play. Arizona ranked. Most people didn't see that coming into the season, although I did say over. I think you may have too. But I didn't see them being 7-3 at this point in the year. And they're the favorite against Utah, which going into the year, we definitely would not have thought that. Let's see here. Ohio State has Minnesota. Shouldn't have any issues there. North Carolina has Clemson. You never know if the good Clemson's going to show up or not. Oregon plays Arizona State. No problem. Oklahoma State has Houston. No problem. Kansas State and Kansas, Dad, 2 ranked opponents. A couple of years ago, wouldn't have thought it this way. Kansas State, though, is a 7.5-point favorite on the road at Kansas, which is intriguing also. And then Washington, Oregon State. Oregon State, the favorite, 2.5. They are at home, but Washington's undefeated. Oregon State has 2 losses. This one is a little mind-boggling. How in the world Oregon State is the favorite in this game?
Yeah, I'm not sure either, but Washington, definitely has to win it in order to stay in the hunt. And winning at Oregon State may not be easy. Oregon State's upset people when they weren't as good, and they obviously have a competitive team this year. So be interesting to see if Washington stays right where they're at, because if they stay undefeated, I'll be a little surprised if they don't make it into the playoff, but we will see. Sure.
Yeah, no, definitely. They will make the playoffs if they're undefeated. They beat Arizona back in September. They beat Oregon in October. They beat USC and on the 4th, Utah last week. They got Oregon State and then Washington State to close out their year. This is the last big challenge for them at this point. And, it's going to be an interesting game. Oregon State, though, again, a 2-loss Oregon State team, how they're favored, even at home. And I know they're a good team. I know they've played well, but, I mean, they beat Stanford. They beat Colorado, excuse me. They lost to Arizona. They beat UCLA, California, Utah. They don't have a ton of great wins. And so I'm intrigued by this line being the way that it is. I think Washington wins it, by the way, and stays undefeated there. Let's talk about, any other games you want to mention before we get into Jim Harbaugh?
No, I think we're fine. And like I said, we're coming down to the end here, big games in another week, so we'll see.
All right, so Jim Harbaugh gets suspended. He has a court date on Friday to see if he can come back and coach against Maryland this week. Of course, Ohio State next week. The general thought process is they can't let him just come back for Ohio State. So they either got to let him back this week or not let him back at all. The conspiracy theorists would be way too active in that situation. So do you think Jim Harbaugh coaches this week? And do you think Jim Harbaugh should be allowed to coach this week?
That's a hard one to say. The question would be, has all the due process been served? As far as did Jim Harbaugh break the rules? Yes, he's pushed every rule for 4 or 5 years. I mean, he takes it as far as you can take it. Does he do stuff that other teams are doing? Yes, but he does it to a far greater extent. He did that with recruiting. He's done that with the portal, I think. And this situation here, do other teams scout people? Maybe so, but do they have staff members hire people to dress up like the staff on the other team and be on the sidelines and video stuff? That hasn't been proven that anybody else has done that yet. I kind of hate to see him not coach against Ohio State, because if Ohio State wins, that's all you're going to hear. And again, Michigan's trying to use this. Everybody's out against them. They're the villain. I was intrigued a week ago. He was a motivational speaker. He brought in Ric Flair, who to teach everybody about how villains work, and that type of stuff. And he just keeps going on and on. So I think it'd be better for the game if he coached against Ohio State. Whether he should or not, the blame lays at him. A coach has to know what's going on. It was his idea. He engineered it. I don't know. But the fact that, he didn't know what was going on, I don't believe that'd be the case. So, Jim Harbaugh is just a tricky thing from there anyhow. So I don't know. It'd be interesting to see if somebody overturns that. I was kind of surprised that they suspended him at all right now before the end of the year.
Well, I mean, you got to suspend him now. That's the only time you can do it. After this season, he'll leave. He almost left last year, tried to leave last year. You got the Bears job that'll probably be open, possible consideration for him. You've got to have a few jobs in the NFL that are going to be open, and the Chargers is going to be open, I would assume. The Bills could be open. There's plenty of options. Anyways, that being said, if you're going to suspend them, you got to do it now because you don't have the time to do it next year. It won't hurt anything next year. Does every team cheat? Every good team cheat? Yes, but the key is not getting caught. And Michigan got caught. And when you get caught, there's consequences. And there are going to be consequences, and there should be consequences. Harbaugh should be suspended, in my opinion, and should not coach the Ohio State game. I think once the regular season is done, then he can come back. But I don't think that he should be allowed to coach again this regular season there. So anyway, it's going to be a fun weekend of college football. Even though there's not a ton of great games, there are some. And then again, we'll have big games next week, massive games next week, and looking forward to some of those as they happen. Let's see here. Okay, that's it. That's all I got for tonight. I could go off on the Brewers stuff more, but I'm not going to. Happy with the hire of the bench coach Murphy. Everything will be fine in Milwaukee. I'll talk more about that as we get closer to baseball season. I want to tell people, though, about the show on Monday nights. We go live at 8 o'clock for the Sports Stove Local Hour, having EKU athletes and coaches on. Looking forward to another great show. I got a co-host, Ryan Jackson. He's on the football team. We get great insight from him, and we'll have guests on again this week. Don't know who they are yet. We got to wait through the weekend to happen. But EKU girls right now beating Evansville, the first time under the new coach. This is his third season that they are started 3-0. They're playing Evansville right now, beating them. The guys are getting ready to play tomorrow night. Football plays Saturday, and volleyball starts tomorrow. ASUN tournament starts Thursday, and if they win the tournament, we'll have someone from EKU volleyball on the show Monday. And then, of course, every Wednesday, me and Dad are here talking all things general sports and keeping you up to date on what's going on here as well. Congrats again to Dad on a perfection week on his picks last week, which means he'll probably go 0 for 6 this week, but that's okay. He always has that 1 week to talk about. And we would thank Righteous Felon Jerky for their support of the program. Go to righteousfelon.com. Use promo code STOVE15 for 15% off your purchase. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Sports Stove for more sports information as well. Thanks for tuning into tonight's edition of the Sports Stove Podcast. Until next time, we'll see you around the Sports Stove.